Welcome, everyone, to an exciting new chapter in OTRS Central history, the debut edition of the OTRS Central podcast here on blogtalkradio.com. And if you ain't digging this mess, baby, let me tell you something. You at the wrong webadwith. While the rest of wrestling fans are laughing and joking, I promise you, baby, this Leg Daddy making magic happen, cooking and smoking, outstanding stuff. Got an exciting first ever edition of this OTRS Central podcast. Before I get to what's going to be on the show, though, make sure, if you haven't for some reason already done so, you go to youtube.com/OTRSCentral. Some of the stuff that's coming down the pike from there now, I've got the WrestleMania review series going all throughout the month of March. That's 28 Mania reviews in 28 days. Why? Because I love you, and I love this crazy, wacky thing that we call professional wrestling. So make sure you go check out that series, some other great topical videos too, as well as later on tonight into early tomorrow morning at some point in time, my review of TNA Lockdown 2014. That is youtube.com/OTRSCentral. Also, very, very important stuff here. Social media plugs. If the WWE can cram it down your throat and shove it up your arse, the Schleg Daddy can too. Make sure you give the show a follow on Twitter. That is twitter.com/OffTheRopeShow, or more affectionately known as Twitter handle @OffTheRopeShow. I know, it's not OTRS Central, but you can deal with it. Give it a follow. I live tweet during Raw, during NXT, sometimes during Impact, and during all the pay-per-views, so I'm sure it's something that you will truly enjoy. I promise you won't be disappointed. Also, have created, as of today, about an hour and a half ago or so, created a new Facebook fan page. Oh, boy, isn't that exciting. Yes, indeed. After this show is done, I'll put the link on Blog Talk Radio in the description box for this show, so that way you can go like the new show Facebook page. I'm sure that's something that all of you can't wait to do. Like I said, I've got an exciting show planned for tonight, right before TNA Lockdown. But before we do that, I've got YouTube personality Dalyxman will be joining us hopefully in just a few minutes if he can put down the WWE Network and the Daniel Bryan never-ending loop of highlights on his computer box there. And we'll talk about things such as the hashtag Hijack Raw movement from this past Monday, the Raw in Chicago, better known as Rosemont. We will talk about CM Punk and what Dalyxman expects to see from CM Punk in the WWE going forward, and whether he expects, frankly, to see CM Punk anytime soon back in the WWE. And then, of course, it just wouldn't be my good friend Alex Dalyxman if we didn't devote the majority of the time to Daniel Bryan. We will talk about Daniel Bryan's development as a character, where he envisions Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, what he thinks should happen at WrestleMania 30 with Daniel Bryan and beyond, and why. I'm also going to have a couple of segments here after Dalyxman. We'll have a call-in segment, probably about 30 minutes or so, maybe a little less, a little more, where you guys can actually call in and ask your questions to me about anything pertaining to the WWE. Then after that, at about 6:40 Central Time, 6:40 Eastern Time, 5:40 Central Time, I'll be joined by a very special guest. That is Metal D. You might remember him from the old Off the Rope Show. Yeah, Off the Rope Show, too. He'll be joining me to talk about the WWE Network. And oh boy, it's going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure a lot of you are looking forward to hearing from Metal D and, seeing what he's been up to and what he thinks about the WWE Network, some of the problems it's had, his initial experiences with using it, and kind of what he envisions for the future with it, and if it's going to be a great success or a great failure. The last half hour of the show, hopefully, I say hopefully because you never know, this is the first time in about 3 years for the Schleg Daddy to do a podcast, so kind of going to be trial by error. You guys are going to have to kind of bear with me here. Hopefully it doesn't suck too bad, but I'll be devoting that last half hour of the show to talking about tonight's TNA Lockdown pay-per-view there at the home of Coral Gables in the Miami, Florida area. We're going to talk about all types of things, and that will, again, be another chance for you to call in and join in on the fun. You could have your voice be heard about Lockdown. You can also sit there and share your thoughts with me on what you expect. You can ask me your questions, whatever the case might be. Now, I will say this, is that this has been a long time coming, and I hope ultimately that this will get bigger and better as it goes along. I appreciate all of you that are tuned in to listen today. It will be truly exciting stuff. Now, I'm waiting for Dalyxman to call in, so it should be sometime in the next couple of minutes. Like I said, he's probably watching some WWE Network stuff on Daniel Bryan because, after all, Daniel Bryan is one of the best motherfucking wrestlers in the world. But I will share this with you. As far as the whole hashtag hijack Raw and everybody's disappointment with CM Punk not, coming back on Monday in his so-called hometown, the bottom line is that I get why so many fans are disillusioned and why so many fans are upset and why so many fans want to sit there and get all upset about this and get all up in arms about this. Now, I could continue to talk about this, but let's segue instead to my first guest joining us from the great state of Texas. I want to make sure he's there. Dalyxman, can you hear me?
What's going on, Blog Talk Radio? What's going on, Off the Rope Show? It is definitely your boy, Dalyxman. What's going on, man?
I'm feeling good. Welcome. Now, the first question I've got for you, Dalyxman, is how honored are you that this is the first podcast venture for Off the Rope Show OTRSCentral in 3 years now, and you were selected to be the first ever guest? Not a wrestler, not anybody else on YouTube. It was you, Dalyxman. It was you.
I have to say, I am pretty honored that the Swag Daddy decided to bring your boy on his Blog Talk Radio. You could have had anybody else, but you got this boy right here. I don't know. I feel very humbled. I don't know what I should do.
Bow down to my awesomeness. No. I appreciate you coming on. We've got a lot to talk about here and a decent amount of time to do that. Now, I suppose we could start off with Hijack Raw. Now, obviously, this past Monday, Raw was in Rosemont, Illinois, the Chicagoland area, needless to say at the old Rosemont Horizon, the Allstate Arena. And I just want to kind of get your thoughts on whether or not you feel that hashtag Hijack Raw was a good idea. Do you feel it was successful? Do you feel it was a failure? What was kind of your whole thoughts going into it? And then with what ultimately ended up happening, what's your whole thought process on this? What's your opinion on this?
Well, man, here's how I see things. Ultimately, what I wanted out of, Hijack Raw in Chicago was a great show. That's all I wanted. I wanted great matches. I wanted great segments. I wanted an intense, excited, just hyper crowd to make the show great. Because ultimately, and you'll probably agree with me on this one, the best cast member of any wrestling show is the audience. Do you agree?
It depends on who you ask. If you ask Vince McMahon, he would say whoever he tells you is the best. But no, ultimately, I would agree. I would agree with this, is that if you have a lively crowd, that always enhances the viewing experience, both for those that are actually there live and in person and for the people watching at home. There's no question about that. Nobody wants to sit there and be around a show where you see a half-empty audience or half-empty arena, or the fans that are there, whether there's a portion of the audience or it's sold out, them being completely quiet. It's just a drag for everybody there and for everybody watching at home. I completely agree. So are you saying that you feel that Hijack Raw was a success then, or I'm kind of trying to pick your brain on this?
Right, and then the segue to answer your question, to me, I didn't really go into Hijack Raw thinking about, I want the crowd to hijack the show and, take it to WWE for not putting Daniel Bryan in the main event. Screw that, fuck this, McMahon. No, it's nothing like that at all. It's pretty much, I just wanted a great show. And ultimately, in that term, I feel like I got what I wanted. I felt like Raw delivered in terms of, from the first segment, they kicked off the show with a great promo by Paul Heyman, who I thought, I don't know how to explain it, but I think Paul Heyman hijacked Raw, He turned it on the fans. He took advantage of the fans going in because he knew that they were going to be hyped up for CM Punk. And he knew they were going to be chanting it throughout the night. So immediately WWE said, we got to send Paul Heyman out there. Paul Heyman, he fed off the audience. He pretty much got his own pipe bomb. And then he took the heat from the CM Punk chant, turned it into storyline for, Brock Lesnar and Undertaker. And to me, I thought that was, I thought that was well played by WWE, and in a sense, I'm not upset about that at all, because what happened is it made the WWE step up their game, and it made them deliver a great show. So in terms of, the WWE step up the game, they give us a great show as a result of, in preparation of the hijack audience, yeah, I felt like the entire show overall, of course, a few minute segments, but overall the show was great to me, so I thought it was a success.
Now, here's my question to you to kind of follow up on that. Was that really what Hijack Raw was ultimately about? Now, that might have been what it was for you and what it would have represented to you, but to me it seemed like it was this attempt at a grassroots movement to really try to create some anarchy and really try to force some dramatic, that's a new word, by the way, Dalyxman, some dramatic, drastic changes in WWE that just aren't coming. And to me, I guess here's my thing is, does it really make sense, knowing that WWE knows they are going into Punk territory? Is it one of these things where it was coincidental that people were doing #HijackRaw and they thought they were going to hijack it in the crowd? Didn't the WWE already know going in that the pressure was going to be on? They knew what the situation was going to be even before all this garbage started on social media and what have you. Didn't they already know that they were kind of going into the lion's den and the pressure was on to produce a great show regardless? And if anything else, wasn't it kind of foolish for fans to sit there a week ahead of time and basically tell the WWE what they were intending to do and what they were planning on doing, whereas the fans had no idea whatsoever what the WWE was going to actually do?
Well, you know what? Somewhat I do agree with you on that one, because the Hijack Raw, the #Hijack Raw has been going on and was been going on for like a couple of weeks now. So, yeah, eventually the WWE was going to get wind of that. And I guess in a sense, if I'm going to be completely honest, I think the people that started the #Raw had the intentions of actually literally hijacking the show and literally, ram-busting the entire segment and the entire show and, taking over and just doing things that the WWE didn't want. They planned on, booing John Cena. They planned on, ripping apart Batista and everybody else in the show. And yeah, just filling the show with frustration and rage for, running off CM Punk and not putting Daniel Bryan in the World Championship picture. So yeah, I do believe that initially the idea was to literally go ECW in Chicago, and I don't know how far they would have taken it. I don't expect any Cane Dewey signs or throwing chairs inside the ring, because at the same time, though, I think the idea was to, yes, I do agree, really, send a message to WWE that we're not happy with your product. Now, in terms of that coming across on Raw, I have to say it didn't do a very good job. It almost felt like the Chicago crowd gave up, like immediately after the Paul Heyman segment. Maybe they were worn out because of the CM Punk chant, or maybe they just felt like, you know what, this isn't a good idea. Maybe this wasn't the best place to do this. So in that sense, if indeed that was the initial goal of it, I will say it was a failure. It's hard to really pick at what these fans are thinking nowadays. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about it? Do you think, what do you feel about that?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. We're talking about somebody here and me, the Schleg Daddy, that has had no problems in the past, and everybody should understand this or should know this. I've had no problems in the past calling out the WWE on what I perceive to be their BS. When it comes to the WWE or the wrestling product as a whole, I don't care if it's fans, I don't care if it's promoters, I don't care if it's wrestlers, people in the business. If something smells like BS to me, I'm going to call them out on it, and I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to point out why I feel it's BS, and a lot of times present an option of why I think it was better. But I guess here's to kind of follow up then again on this, because I think this is very important, and I think you kind of know where I stand on this. When it comes to like a #HijackRaw, this almost seemed like a pathetic attempt to mimic the crowd of Miami after WrestleMania 28, the crowd in New Jersey after WrestleMania 29. As it kind of seemed like this was only nothing more than maybe a copycat thing where they were trying to do it but do it better, because people have been hijacking, and you correct me if I'm right or wrong here, they have been hijacking John Cena segments and matches for 9 damn years. The Breakfast Club has reigned supreme in the WWE for years. So if people thought all of a sudden they were going to go to Chicago Raw there in Rosemont at the Allstate Arena and they were going to chant for CM Punk and interrupt all these matches and all this other stuff, what made them think that the WWE would truly care, knowing that you've already paid your money to get into the venue to begin with? You've probably bought merch, you've bought concessions, a lot of those people probably have already paid to actually subscribe to the WWE Network. Isn't this a perfect example of how fans don't understand how to really hurt and make an impact on the WWE? They get caught up in thinking like fans too much and thinking with their hearts and not with their brains. And you know that one video I did where I talked about you got to hit Vince in the ass pocket, #ass pocket, because that's the only way you're going to ultimately affect any real change in the WWE is to hit him where it hurts in the wallet. I mean, so why would fans, and I want to hear your perspective on this because maybe you have some people that have given you insight. Why do fans think that something like a #hijack Raw even works or even makes any sense or isn't a good idea to do? When you've already given them your money, you're going to the venue. Does it really matter at that point to the WWE whether you cheer or boo or however the heck you react?
Well, see, some fans, and, this is just from, like I said, from what I've observed from wrestling fans and why they do this and stuff like that. Some fans do it just to, even though they know their voice doesn't really affect anything, they do it because they want to feel like they're contributing. They do it because, you know what, although I know for certain that I am lack of a better term, the vocal minority, which is a term I hate, but it's there's the truth behind it. Although I am a vocal minority, I still want to feel like that my voice matters. And so what we'll do is I'll scream at the top of my lungs. I'll get on YouTube, I'll get on Twitter, and I'll start something. And hopefully it'll catch on. Usually that doesn't happen. Another reason that I feel like they do stuff like this is because they look at the past. They look at what it was like in the Attitude Era, what it was like in, certain eras like ECW. ECW is probably the best example, where literally the crowd controlled the show. And I think fans believe that, hey, maybe we can create an ECW type of, venue with Raw if we get enough people to do it. The problem is, and, I hope fans are listening to me when I say this, when it comes to ECW, it was great, but it was small, and not small in the sense of, it was like below WWE. Well, you know what I'm trying to say. But, the fans there, they were crazy, they were hyped, they were hardcore fans, but, it had such a small audience to draw from that, they were able to make that impact. They were catering to that audience. As you notice, when ECW grew bigger, they kind of stopped doing that, and at the business level that the WWE is right now, the conglomerate that it is, that's gone worldwide, it's really hard to really create that ECW-like venue with Raw where the crowd controls the show. Like I said, I do believe the best cast member of the show is the crowd. However, for the fans to feel like, oh, if I do this, if I do that, I can make Vince McMahon do whatever. Now, Vince McMahon may listen to the audience eventually and give them what they want because he's a smart man like that. But he also has to let them know that, listen, guys, I've been doing this for how many years? I've been doing this for decades. I appreciate your passion, but you guys don't quite understand what's going on here. And eventually, I think, #Raw was an indication of that. Hey, we'll make you feel like that you're taking over, but you're really not in charge. So that's my whole thoughts on that.
Well, here's a thing to keep in mind when we're talking about ECW, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think a lot of fans have this misperception that a bunch of hardcore fans started hijacking WWF shows in the mid-'90s, and that's what forced the change. And that is a ridiculous notion, and I'll tell you why. Because that stuff was starting back at King of the Ring 95 when Mabel won King of the Ring and people were chanting ECW, and all this stuff. Now, keep in mind, by the time he got to like 96, 97, Vince was actually partially bankrolling Paul Heyman in ECW, which is something that a lot of times seems to be left out of the equation. So, but you look at, and you know this too, Dalyxman, because you've gone back and watched WWF in 95, in 96, and even, as you got ready to go into 97, not much really changed. Vince McMahon was still doing things the way Vince McMahon felt was best. What forced that change? Sure, a portion of the audience stopped watching WWF and started watching ECW. A much more sizable portion of his old audience flipped over to TNT and TBS and started watching WCW. Once fans stopped going to the shows, once he started losing in the ratings, and once he got to the point where he was losing money in a bad, big way, that is what caused the change, not people chanting for ECW or this or that or et cetera, et cetera. Now, I do want to ask you this. Now, you're somebody that, you know, a lot of times as a fan, you think with your heart. Now, and again, I don't want to begrudge anybody, whether it's you or anybody else, for having a love or a passion for professional wrestling, because God knows I do too. But I have to imagine that it frustrates you, if not flat out pisses you off, when somebody like a Dolph Ziggler is wrestling, or a Daniel Bryan is talking or having a match, or a Bray Wyatt is cutting a promo, or a Roman Reigns and The Shield are appearing, and people are chanting for CM Punk. Does that make any sense in the world whatsoever? Now, here is a guy, and I'm going to operate based off of my own assumptions. That can be my own, and that's fine. But I fully believe that CM Punk left of his own fruition. He did what he did, and that's it. Why would people continue to chant for a guy that is not there instead of throwing additional support to the guys that are there, that are still busting their asses for them, these guys that these fans are supposed to like and supposed to love? I mean, you love Dolph Ziggler. You love Daniel Bryan. You love CM Punk. If you were there live in attendance, would you really sit there, Dalyxman, and be sitting there chanting for CM Punk during a Daniel Bryan segment or a Daniel Bryan match?
Well, honestly, to answer that question, no. If Daniel Bryan is on my TV, my full attention is devoted to Daniel Bryan. Also, if Dolph Ziggler was on my TV, same thing. If the Usos are on my TV, same thing. If Bray Wyatt was on my TV, same thing. But to me, and, you know, again, this is coming straight from conversations with wrestling fans and interacting with them, I think the CM Punk chants have different reasons behind just, oh, we want CM Punk back. Screw the show. Screw the WWE for getting rid of him. I think number one reason why fans chant CM Punk is definitely because they want him back. But the second reason behind that, and this is what's told to me, fans are chanting CM Punk to vent frustration and to send a message to WWE. It's almost like, I don't want to say the wet chant, because actually, let's talk about that, because CM Punk leaving is very similar to Stone Cold Steve Austin leaving in 2000. The big difference is back then when Austin left, you know, the crowd didn't chant, we want Austin, or Stone Cold, or, you know, whatever they chant for Austin, the hell yeah, or what. They still did what, but see, back then in 2002, you had stars like Kurt Angle, you had The Rock, you had people like Triple H, you had people like, you know, Chris Benoit or Shawn Michaels or Chris Jericho. You had people to carry the load when Austin left, which made the audience, you know, just, in a sense, not forget about Austin, but they felt like, hey, he's gone, but we don't necessarily need Austin to be on TV.
He wasn't even the top guy at that point. The Rock had surpassed him, and then, like you said, you had the Hogans and the et ceteras of the world. Flair was there. You still had Taker wrestling on a full-time basis. You had the talent roster where you could drop an Austin, and it didn't really matter at the end of the day. Sure, they would take a hit in terms of merch, and some Austin fans might be pissed off, but were they going to stop watching just because an Austin wasn't there when all these other great talents were there? I get that. But we get to this whole CM Punk thing. And this is what I wanted to touch on really quickly before we move on to Daniel Bryan. I know you're a big CM Punk fan. What are your thoughts on him not being on WWE television now for, what, we're getting to a month and a half plus? Do you still believe this is a work? Do you believe this is a shoot? Do you hold any grudges against CM Punk? Are you angry with CM Punk at all? Are you angry with fans that are chanting for him? Like you said, I get the whole thing of choosing to rebel, but in segments like with Dolph Ziggler and Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt and The Shield and these people that the hardcore wrestling fans claim to love and are supposed to love, they're chanting for a guy ultimately that isn't there, instead of throwing even more support to the guys that are. Does that frustrate you? Do you understand it? Do you agree with it?
I do, just to answer your question first off about the frustration part, I do think the fans do get a little out of hand with the CM Punk chants because, like I said, when Daniel Bryan's on TV, there's really no need to chant for CM Punk because this is a guy that ultimately, even when CM Punk was there, the fans cared about Daniel Bryan getting the main event, and I felt like the CM Punk chants were out of place for that point in time. Now, if you want to chant it for like the Diva segment or like Fandango versus Santino Morello, the Great Khali versus Damian Sandow, okay, it makes sense. But for the great talent, like you just said, that were out there busting their ass and giving us good TV, because ultimately that's what we want, good TV. Daniel Bryan, Usos, Wyatts, etc. The CM Punk chants do feel out of place. Now, in terms of CM Punk leaving and all that kind of stuff, I made a video about this, and I've said this many times before. I don't know Phillip Brooks, but based off of reports, if he was definitely, frustrated with his character, with the direction that he was going in, if he had nagging injuries, if he, was tired of being on the road, sick of being around the people he was working with, all that stuff builds up over time. And, I could, be the professional one and say, you know what, he probably should have waited until his contract expired in July and then left.
Right.
But then I think about, the timing of his leave, because he left not too long after Royal, the Monday Night Raw after Royal Rumble, he left, which has to tell you that had to be intentional, because this is WrestleMania season. This is in the middle of WrestleMania season. This is the big paycheck, the most TV time, the best storylines. This is the place to be. This is what this is what every wrestler is wrestling their career to be at, WrestleMania. For CM Punk to leave before WrestleMania, he really, really had to it has to be intentional. He had to have thought of something. And
why would it be at work for him to leave before the biggest show of the year that would produce the biggest payout of the year?
Because CM Punk he knew that the audience would turn on WWE. He knew the audience would give him flack for it. And in his mind, he knew that WWE would fight for him to come back. And you know what? I don't want to say politicking, but in a sense, I think CM Punk is doing this on purpose because he knows that WWE needs him. And eventually, I think CM Punk will come back, and yes, I do believe he's not going to stay away for long. He'll probably come back after WrestleMania sometime. In terms of him staying for like a long term, that's to be decided. But in terms of CM Punk leaving before WrestleMania, I think he did that to send a message to WWE in terms of, guys, I don't need this. I can leave anytime I want. I've done everything I can possibly do. I've already wrestled at WrestleMania. I've already been world champion. I'm the longest reigning world champion in the last few decades. I won every title that needs to win. I've beaten the top. I've beaten the best. I fought the best. There's nothing else I need to do but main event WrestleMania. And I think CM Punk did that to show WWE that if you're not going to treat my character with the right respect, if you're not going to, showcase me as the top guy that I believe I am, and I know that I am, then I don't need to be here. Now, professionally, I will admit that that's probably not the best thing to do, but you know what? Some people may look at that and go, you know what? I respect that. A guy that busted his ass for everything he's done, who is great at his job, should get a high regard, respect in that. Now, again, I do think he should have stayed and finished up his contract before leaving, but that's to be determined. And if he does come back, we'll see where that goes. But in terms of CM Punk leaving, go ahead.
I will say one thing to kind of defend CM Punk is that somebody could fire him without giving, and this kind of translates to the business world too, where if you're an employee, you're expected to be professional on the way out, not burn bridges, give a proper 2-week notice or whatever the agreed upon notice is, what have you. But an employer in most states can just fire you at will, with or without reason, for whenever and wherever and however they want to. So I get that CM Punk has been in a position where he's afforded himself the luxury to, if he doesn't want to do it anymore, he can pick up his ball and go home. What I don't like is when people sit there and say that he was treated terribly. Now look, was he given the spot of somebody like a John Cena? No, of course not. And he shouldn't have been naive enough to ever think that that would happen, as tragic as it might seem. But this is a guy that feuded in the past couple of years with people like Undertaker, people like Chris Jericho, people like Brock Lesnar, people like Triple H. And we could sit there and talk about this, people like John Cena, people like Daniel Bryan, people like Randy Orton. We could sit there and talk about the fact of, well, he wasn't treated all that well. Well, he sure got to feud with a lot of the top guys. I mean, that is something that can't be denied. He got a chance to feud with a lot of the top guys. You just said yourself, how many days? 434 days as WWE champion? Was that the number of days, 434?
Yes, that's it, sir.
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, I like that. You called me sir. No, I'm kidding. But,
that just slipped off. That's a Texan thing. I'm sorry, man.
But while they didn't always treat him the best during that title reign, which is something I talked about a lot, I find it kind of hypocritical of supposedly be pissed off about not main eventing a WrestleMania when during his 434-day title reign, he had no problem sitting there pumping out the propaganda and the BS talking about, well, it doesn't matter if you go on last or not. It matters which match is most memorable and which match steals the show. BS. The bottom line is, in the WWE, the main event of a pay-per-view has always been the last match of the pay-per-view. The match that pays out the best is the last match of the pay-per-view. The bottom line is CM Punk, Phillip Brooks, in my opinion, got pissed off because he felt like he deserved a main event at WrestleMania. And I don't disagree with him. But if I'm a Vince McMahon, if this guy could potentially leave as of July, why would I give him a WrestleMania main event? Why would I do that? I've treated this guy well. After WrestleMania 29, I gave him some time off because he was worn down and his body was hurting. I've done a lot for him. I've pushed his merch to the point where he is easily the number 2 merch seller in the WWE. They treated this guy very well. Not perfectly, not John Cena well, not Randy Orton well, not Dave Bautista well, but for the fans to me to sit there and say that CM Punk got treated terribly, I just think that's a big load of BS. He didn't get treated as well as some others, but he still got treated well. Who do you think got treated worse, a CM Punk or a Dolph Ziggler? Dolph's never even gotten nearly the opportunities of a CM Punk. If anybody should be upset about anybody's treatment, it should be fans of Dolph Ziggler for Dolph Ziggler. Anytime he ever gets close to that mountaintop or he gets a chance to maybe break through that glass ceiling, bam, it comes crashing down and they bury his ass, and it's ridiculous. So for the fans that sit there and say, you know, CM Punk was treated poorly and I can't blame him, I understand to a degree. But let's be realistic here. He was treated a hell of a lot better than 99% of that roster. Ask what it's like for a Zack Ryder or a Dolph Ziggler or a Damian Sandow or a Kofi Kingston to get the WWE burial treatment. I mean, those have been guys that have been buried over a period of time. CM Punk never has. Now, speaking of that, let's move on to your favorite topic of all, and that is Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
Now,
yes. Yes.
Now, I know that he is easily your favorite wrestler in the professional wrestling business today. But the bigger question for me is, why do you love Daniel Bryan so much? Why is he your favorite? Why is he the guy that gets you to stand up and do videos about him? And what is it that's got you on board with the Yes Movement more than anything else?
Anything, I have to say, you know, living vicariously to Daniel Bryan, the thing that draws me towards him the most out of any other character that I've seen over the last decade or so is the fact that not only is he great at what he does or has a passion for the business and all that kind of jazz, it's the fact that you look at these, you know, big muscle men, you look at these giants and these Goliaths in the world of WWE, and you look at Daniel Bryan, and you see this guy in there, and yeah, he is small. You see this man in there who is, you know, he has the ferocity of a giant, but he's small. But he also has the fight and the heart and the passion to continue going even when he's down. It's the idea that Daniel Bryan, when you knock him down, he keeps getting back up and he keeps working towards it. A man like that, in any sport, you can go to boxing, you can go to, you know, basketball, and anything, in any sort of venue. When you have a character like that, you can't tell me that he's not somebody to get behind. He's been like that when he was Bryan Danielson and ROH. He's been like that, you know, in the other wrestling companies he's been in, all over the world. You know, NJ PW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, you want to go to PWG, it's the character that grabs me. And that is why, Daniel Bryan is my favorite wrestler right now. And people might say, well, John Cena's like that. Not really. I don't believe John Cena. It's a lot harder to get behind someone like John Cena. Look at him. He's muscle-bound. He's rich. He's the most popular guy in the world. It's easy to like a John Cena. It's really easy. Of course you like him. He's a rich, muscle-bound motherfucker who picks up people. He can pick up everybody, anybody. He's strong as shit. He's Superman. It's easy to like Superman. But when you see someone like a Daniel Bryan, who, in all honesty, shouldn't even be in the WWE, shouldn't even be swimming with the sharks that he's swimming with right now, but to see him get to where he is right now and not only swim but thrive and continue to grow in that area, it's inspiring, man. And that's why, ultimately, I'm a fan of Daniel Bryan.
So you're kind of saying there, which I think is kind of interesting, you touched on it, is that his biggest strength for you is also his biggest weakness in terms of his positioning in the company to a degree, and that is his size and his style and his look and all of that. Correct me if I'm wrong here. His biggest strength that allows him to you to connect with him as a fan and for him to connect with the audience is also, ironically enough, perhaps that biggest weight that drags him down, the biggest anchor, that biggest liability. How do you think a Daniel Bryan overcome that biggest obstacle? Let's face it. Certain people are born with height and a great frame and a great physique, and some people aren't. Daniel Bryan is never going to be a giant. He could sit there and put the stretching machine on and try and make himself 6'4", but, ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to happen. How do you think he and the WWE can overcome that big obstacle and continue to overcome that big obstacle to make him a legit 100%, no matter what they do with him, top guy in the WWE?
Well, and I think you said this before, too, in one of your reviews, probably all your reviews. The biggest drawing factor for Daniel Bryan as of right now is the fact that he struggles a lot. He's the underdog. He's the guy that, okay, you look at him, you compare him to John Cena. Who do you expect to win? Cena. But he beat Cena. That is, to me, the biggest drawing factor of Daniel Bryan, and I think that is going to be a big contributor to, him being a top star, a big player in WWE in the near future. Now, along with that, has to come the idea that, and this is something I hope he gets, that in the near future, that when it comes down to it, when you piss, because this will show in ROH too, Daniel Bryan has a vicious side to him that has yet. It's been shown glimmers in WWE here and there, but it hasn't been exposed to the point that this is a part of his character. There's a different side to Daniel Bryan, a vicious, maniacal side, that if he gets pissed off, if you push him too far and you let him, get to his dark side of himself, he can beat anybody. He can break legs. He can break arms. He can, put you in any type of submission hold and make you cry like a bitch. Seriously. He can take the biggest giants and have them screaming to their mamas in a few seconds. And that's just something the WWE hasn't created yet. And I think once they're able to create that idea with Daniel Bryan, yeah, he's small. Yeah, he's an underdog. But once you piss him off, once you push him to the edge, and once he gets to a point that it's either do or die, and he lets loose, I think, he's going to be a great star. And I can give you an example of this. I don't think you remember this match, but Money in the Bank 2000, and actually, yeah, it was recent, Money in the Bank 2013. In that very match, there was a point in the match where everybody was inside the ring, and then Daniel Bryan just lost his shit. He got angry. And the next thing you know, he's going all over the place. He's taking people down. He knocks Sheamus off the top rope to the table. He knocks somebody up the ladder. And he clears the entire ring. And that ring was top stars. I'm talking Randy Orton, CM Punk, John Cena, Sheamus, Christian, Rob Van Dam. And that's a big fucking deal. That's what I need. That's what I want to see more of Daniel Bryan. I think once they instill that and make it like, a big intricate part of his character, a lot more than what they're doing with it right now. I think instantly, Daniel Bryan's star power will grow even more and more, and it might actually surpass John Cena. And yes, I just said that. I think that Daniel Bryan has potential to surpass John Cena, in my personal opinion.
Now, basically what you want them to do is you want them to give him a Ken Shamrock element to his character, which I don't disagree with at all, because there does come to a point where every man has a breaking point, and to me, if anything, I would agree that would enable him to connect even more with the audience. But when we talk about Daniel Bryan, is this an example of where the simplicity, because if you remember way back in 2012, just as this was starting, I said that they needed to seize this, they had something here, and this was a very simple and easy way to get this guy over like $1 million. The question is, though, is that we could talk about him whether or not he's truly transcended and gone mainstream. Some elements he absolutely has, and some elements he probably has not yet. Is there going to be an instance here? I guess kind of the question I have is Daniel Bryan over with the live event audience, but it doesn't always necessarily translate to the people watching at home and the casual kind of viewer? Is he ever going to be able to maybe break through that glass ceiling and cross over like that? Or is he not going to be able to do that? And even if he gets close to that, is the WWE going to prevent him from doing that? Meaning, if he gets to that point where he could become the top guy, let's say in theory, even though he's not a part of the Breakfast Club, Dalyxman, you know better. If he does get to that point, are they going to knock him down and make sure that he's nothing more than the number 2?
Man, you know what? I can't read WWE's mind nowadays, but I guess based off of history, and this is to answer this question, I have to go off of history here. In terms of, again, because of who he is, because of his size, I fear eventually if Daniel Bryan doesn't draw in the numbers, doesn't, his live audience star power doesn't translate to viewership, they might indeed, stop him from breaking that glass ceiling. But I will say this, though. The yes chant, the yes movement, it may be, a tool for Daniel Bryan's character, but there's some legitimacy behind that. You've seen the videos. You see the yes chants not just happening on TV. You see them in schools. You see them in sports. You see them all over the place. You see them happening outside the business. The yes chant has become so popular that it has literally transcended the WWE. And I think the WWE, hopefully they see that. And if they do see that and they're smart enough to take advantage of that, I think they're going to use that popularity that Daniel Bryan has created. Now, some people might say that the yes chant is making Daniel Bryan and not the other way around. I can agree with that somewhat. And you know what? It's whatever. Daniel Bryan is still going to be the man, regardless of what perspective you look at it. Daniel Bryan makes the yes chant makes Daniel Bryan. Getting back to my point here, though, if the WWE is smart enough, they should, and I believe they will, hopefully, take advantage of that and, use that yes chance to promote not just Daniel Bryan, but themselves. They can easily turn that around and say, hey, this yes chant, this became popular, that was us. We started that. It was one of our characters. And hopefully, Vince McMahon being the businessman that he is, we start to see this, translate into some good things for Daniel Bryan in the near future. And that's all I can really say about it. This is a really hard subject to, give you a definite answer on. It's just speculation at this point.
I know it hits you right there in the loincloth region. Let's talk about something else that probably does potentially hit you very hard in the crotch region. And that is what has gone on with Daniel Bryan in 2014. Now, let me set the table for those of you listening so that way you can kind of get where I'm going with this. A lot of people believed, foolishly in my opinion, that Daniel Bryan was going to both beat Bray Wyatt and then apparently enter the Royal Rumble and win the 2014 Royal Rumble. Apparently they don't understand how the WWE works. It doesn't make it right. It just is how they work. It is. So he lost to Bray Wyatt, which wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing at all because Bray Wyatt had to go to such extremes to beat a Daniel Bryan. That's one of those great classic matches that helps both and hurts neither. Now, Elimination Chamber comes along, obviously, and I think some people, again, foolishly were expecting the WWE to put the title on Daniel Bryan. That wasn't going to happen. Now we get to WrestleMania season, And now this is where you get that interesting dynamic with CM Punk. Now with CM Punk being out of the picture, Triple H needs a Mania payday. Ugh. He needs a big-time opponent for WrestleMania. His ego demands it, and by God, the WWE demands it. So in steps Daniel Bryan. Now, when we talk about this, this has been a storyline that's been going on since what? Leading into SummerSlam 2013? Are you content?
Right.
Are you content with Daniel Bryan facing Triple H at WrestleMania 30 and beating him?
Well,
if that's what was to happen, would you be content with that happening, and then maybe, let's say, at some point in time later on in the year, whether it be the next month, a couple of months later, would you be okay with Daniel Bryan winning the belt then? Does it make enough storyline sense for you to get over the fact that maybe you want him to win the belt at Mania? What's your thought on this?
Well, before I get into Triple H and Daniel Bryan and the whole WrestleMania 30 bit, I will, tell you about how I felt about the Royal Rumble. And yes, I will happily admit, I was one of those fans raging in my room, tossing my clothes around and destroying shit because Batista or Daniel Bryan wasn't in the Royal Rumble, Batista won it. I was pissed. I was mad. And yes, I will probably give you tell you that yes, maybe I was naive in a sense, because I'm thinking, again, tying into how popular Daniel Bryan is, I'm thinking the WWE must know that this guy is the most popular man in their company. I mean, holy crap, he was Superstar of the Year in 2013. I mean, you have to believe that they're going to do something with him special, right? So going into the Royal Rumble, Bray Wyatt versus Daniel Bryan, classic match, Bray Wyatt winning, I had no issues with that. It actually, in hindsight, was better for Bray Wyatt to win, therefore Daniel Bryan to win, because Daniel Bryan didn't get hurt at all, and Bray Wyatt, he's about to fight John Cena at WrestleMania. Different topic, but
it's funny. It's funny how they turned him away from the Wyatt family so quickly. At least I will give the WWE credit. They realized it was the wrong way for them to go at the time. There was no reason to go there, so they quickly ended it. There was anybody that lives in this fantasy world that this was some great epic storytelling. Let me tell you something, it wasn't. But Daniel Bryan versus Triple H can be an example of actually really good storytelling, because again, this guy has basically been the authorities I don't know what you want to call it, bitch, since SummerSlam.
Yeah, he's been your little bitch for a while now. I agree with that. And, sorry to interrupt you right there, but, I agree since SummerSlam, when you think about it. Yeah, you're right.
So when it comes down to it, is the bigger story at this point for WrestleMania Daniel Bryan needing to one-up the authority and beat Triple H, or is it he needs to win the title as the ultimate FU? Which one do you think is better ultimately? Which one do you think makes more storyline sense?
I have to say the bigger storyline here is his battle against the authority. I think Daniel Bryan versus Triple H ultimately makes the most sense because, again, going back to SummerSlam, who was the guy that screwed him over? Triple H. Who was the guy that screwed him over at Night of Champions? Triple H. Who was the guy that messed him over again at Hell in a Cell? Triple H. Who's the guy that most likely sent the Wyatt family after him? Triple H. Who's the guy that didn't put him in the Royal Rumble? Triple H. Who's the guy that, I go back to Elimination Chamber. Who's the guy that sent Kane out there most likely? Triple H. The guy is a dark cloud over Daniel Bryan's life. And ultimately, the story is, as much as I want Daniel Bryan to be champion, I'll get to another point in a second, but ultimately the story calls for Daniel Bryan to fight Triple H. And again, I said this months ago, if Daniel Bryan was to not be in the World Championship picture, I would be perfectly fine with him fighting Triple H. And honestly, the more the storyline goes on, the more they tell the story of Triple H at first denying Daniel Bryan, you're not worthy of me. I'm an A-plus player. You're a B-plus player. It's asking a lot of questions. And the best storylines, the best stories ask you those questions to get you intrigued. How is Daniel Bryan going to get to fight Triple H at WrestleMania? That's the first question. Will he beat Triple H? That's like the ultimate question. Can he definitely beat Triple H? Not just because he's fucking Triple H, he's the game, or he's God, but, he's also the head boss. He has different powers. He has different things under his sleeve that he can use against Daniel Bryan. At this point in time, the WWE Championship is an obstacle, and, But the bigger obstacle here is, can he overcome not just a corporate figure of the company, but can he overcome the game? You know, the cerebral assassin, a guy that gave people like Taker, Austin, The Rock, these awesome, great characters, Shawn Michaels, Mankind. He retired Mick Foley, for Christ's sake. This is the same guy that did all those kinds of things, one of the most dangerous entities in wrestling. Can Daniel Bryan truly overcome that obstacle? And, you know, the more I talk about it, the more I get excited for it. I start to agree that, yeah, the best match to happen at WrestleMania has to definitely be Daniel Bryan versus Triple H. I'm just saying it right now.
Now, here's the thing, is I've started to see a lot of fans and some of the other, like, internet wrestling community talking heads, so to speak, talk about the fact that the whole WrestleMania mantra of Vince McMahon is to ultimately send the fans home happy, which is largely true, but there are a couple of notable exceptions. The ironic thing is one of the more serious fans' favorite WrestleManias, if not favorite WrestleManias of all time, is WrestleMania 17 at the Reliant Astrodome in Houston, Texas, where Stone Cold Steve Austin, for dumb dick reasons that are still not understood to this day, turned heel. You took the embodiment of the Attitude Era, the person that the fans loved, and you turned him heel. That sent nobody home happy. Everybody was pissed off with that. WrestleMania 16, the year before, Triple H walked in the champion. He remained the champion. Yeah, that's just a couple of examples over the past 29 WrestleManias. But, you know, it's kind of funny to me when people sit there and talk about, well, he just has to produce that great WrestleMania moment that sends the people home happy. So putting Daniel Bryan in that match, if Batista is designed to win this all along, which is what I believe, would the fans go home happy if Daniel Bryan got put in the match just for Batista to pin him? Or for a Randy Orton, let's say, to beat him? Or for Daniel Bryan to not be involved in the decision at all? Or for a Triple H or a Kane to interfere and cost him the match? Would that really send anybody home happy?
No, it wouldn't. I agree with you.
I mean, do you really want Daniel Bryan in that title match, knowing there's a strong possibility that he might not win that title? And no, this does to me not compare to Benoit in the build-up to WrestleMania 20, because Benoit won the Royal Rumble. Daniel Bryan wasn't even in the Royal Rumble. Benoit had, to me, years where he hadn't been the top guy in the WWE. You know, he had been a WCW World Champion, yes, but he had never reached that milestone in the WWE. Whether people like it or not, Daniel Bryan has been a multiple-time world champion in the WWE. So it doesn't have that same element. It doesn't have that same story to it, and I'm sorry. But Randy Orton and Dave Batista are not Triple H and Shawn Michaels. There are entirely different dynamics here 10 years later. Now, could you sit there and argue that if people believe that, well, you got to send the fans home happy, couldn't you sit there and get around that by having Batista be the champion and not having to have a clear-cut babyface in your world title match if you either main evented Taker and Lesnar or you main evented God versus Daniel Bryan? Wouldn't that be an opportunity to overcome not having a babyface in that title match and still send the fans home happy?
Absolutely. And if they do that, I think the audience will, you know, accept that a lot more. Because at this point in time, if they do go through with Batista versus Randy Orton, that audience is going to shit on it. I don't care what they do, all right? It's almost to the point now that WWE has literally booked themselves into the corner. They know, and I think, you know, WWE will probably admit this too, Batista and Randy Orton is destined to be a match that the fans will crap and destroy. I don't see how any sort of reason or any sort of way they can change that up. Besides the fact that it's heel versus heel, it's two men that, first, the audience doesn't want to see, and the Breakfast Club, and two, it doesn't, again, it's taking away the factor that our guy is not in that match. So if our guy's not going to be in the match, then fuck your match. We're going to take a big crap on it for all I care. And in that sense, I do believe that the better option would be to put Daniel Bryan and Triple H in the main event. Now, I have a question for you, Slag Daddy, because I asked this to some of my fans out there earlier. I asked them the question of, would you prefer to see Daniel Bryan wrestle Triple H or in the World Championship? Or, a third option, would you be okay with him wrestling in both matches, pulling a double duty, fighting Triple H, and then probably having a stipulation where if you beat Triple H, then you get inserted into the main event match. And then possibly, again, be able to create a WrestleMania moment where, just send the fans home happy or get disappointed and he loses. But in your opinion, would having both matches, would having Daniel Bryan in the main event and Triple H be the better option? Or, how do you feel about that?
Well, let me put it to you this way. That's kind of similar to the treatment that Bret Hart got at WrestleMania 10. The big difference at that time was that they were going to roll with Bret the Hitman Hart as their top guy for the rest of 1994. I do not want to see Daniel Bryan work both matches just to where he beats Triple H, and then he gets in that title match and doesn't win. Or if he gets into that match with Triple H, he beats him, and then he goes on to somehow magically overcome these monster odds, and he sticks it to the Breakfast Club again, and he wins the title just to have him lose it the next night on Raw or at the next pay-per-view Extreme Rules. In order for them to do that, to me, it's one of those examples of where if you're going to do it, you have to and must go all the way, because that is the only way it will ultimately work. If you are going to have him wrestle Triple H maybe at the early portion of the night, which I'm not sure God would sign off on because he doesn't view himself anymore as a first or second match player, brother, then comes back and he gets into that main event, you give the crowd that babyface, you give the match that babyface that it probably does need, even though the WWE might not agree and might not see it that way, especially if they're going with this whole mantra of there's no more baby faces and heels. The bottom line is you could sit there and put Daniel Bryan in there and have him win and create this great WrestleMania moment, but if you're not going to go with him and you're not going to roll with him for the rest of the year and you're not going to make that statement that you stand behind Daniel Bryan and he is the top guy, he is the biggest star, then what the hell's the point? You're just dick teasing, and it's like you're running scared if you're the WWE. You're just going to give everybody this one night to shut everybody up, and then you're going to go right back to doing Breakfast Club business the WWE way because that's WWE business. I don't want to see that unless they're going to go all the way. If not, I would rather him just face Triple H at WrestleMania, have him beat Triple H at WrestleMania, and then maybe, you know what, at some point in time, continue to drag the storyline out and maybe wait until you get closer to SummerSlam for him to win the title from, let's say, a Batista. The last question I have for you about this, though, I think is very important. We talk about Dalyxman in today's WWE. I know you see it, I see it, most fans see it. The faces are the villains and the heels are the heroes because the faces win too damn often, have too few obstacles, and the heels have all the obstacles, and they always lose, it seems like. So they become the heroes that the fans get emotionally invested in. With Daniel Bryan, he's actually been a different babyface, you would agree, that he's had challenges and obstacles to overcome. Is the WWE running a risk of if they don't put the belt on him soon, that it's not going to matter at the end of the day, and fans will actually start to tune him out a little bit, and they will lose a little bit of what they had?
And see, this is a question that I've been contemplating myself, too, because I don't know if you've been watching my videos a lot. I had a friend called Joe who's a casual viewer on my channel. Those of you who know who he is. He said the exact same thing. He's wondering at this point in time, if they don't put the belt on Daniel Bryan, he's just going to not care when they actually do. But the other side of that coin is, let's say they do put the belt on Daniel Bryan, and they give him the John Cena treatment, where he just beats everybody, and then he becomes an obstacle that has to overcome. And, fans, end up turning on him, and then it's nasty and stuff like that. In terms of, to answer your question, eventually, I think the WWE has to have a destination for the storyline besides the Triple H being them. The ultimate goal to cap off this storyline has to be, and I really stress this, it has to be with Daniel Bryan winning the championship, because if it's not, they really do risk the opportunity of drawing fans away. And I really do mean that. Maybe it won't be like a big portion of the audience where they can, they'll lose like a big portion, like they'll go down to, 1.0 ratings or something like that. They won't get that bad. But it gets to a point where you have this guy who fans are invested in. You have this lightning in a bottle that if you capitalize on it, it can do great things for you. But if you don't capitalize on it, you let it wither away, eventually you're gonna go back to the days of, fans hating on the John Cena's, the fans hating on the baby faces, the Sheamuses, and loving the heels, because you continue to promote them as the obstacles, and you have an opportunity right now to change all of that, because you actually have a babyface character that fans love. You have a guy that fans are willing to get behind, who feels sympathetic when he's beat down, and then when he overcomes things, they get excited for it. I go back to when, even though it was 2 weeks, when he was with the Wyatt family and he went back to being a babyface, that reaction was amazing. When he took off the Wyatt family clothes and he did the whole yes chant, the yes taunt audience, like a freaking chorus, doing it with him. And it's like, and that was just a 2 week, oh my God, Daniel Bryan's leaving us. Oh, he's back. Yes. Now, I'm imagining that with this big storyline going for how many months? Since August last year, I'm going to say about 7, 8, 9 months. If it caps off with a big moment like him winning the WWE Championship, it's going to be a moment. Or him being Triple H, it's going to be a moment. And the WWE has to know that. And for them to, shit the bed and, not get Daniel Bryan in that moment ultimately, I think it's going to be, in my personal opinion, bad for business. Now, how you feel about it is how you feel about it. I just think at this point, Daniel Bryan is the man, and they should capitalize on where he is right now, ultimately.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to say, actually, somebody here has one last question for you. It's a special guest. Excuse me, Dalyxman.
Hi.
Mark is smart here, and what I want to know is, how can you sit there and in good faith and conscience sit there and prostitute yourself as the biggest fan of Daniel Bryan in the entire world when you are perfectly okay with him wrestling Triple H at WrestleMania 30? No, this is not acceptable. I am Daniel Bryan's biggest fan because I will not rest until he has put in the WWE World Heavyweight Championship match at WrestleMania 30. Have you created a White House petition? No. Mark is smart has. And do you know why? Because Daniel Bryan is the best wrestler in the world. And I'm tired of everybody referring to you as the biggest Daniel Bryan fan of all times. I'm the biggest Daniel Bryan fan. I'm Marcus Smart, and you are nothing more than number 2 doo-doo. Good day, sir.
Well, Mark, I'll say it like this, Mark. If you want to get inside the ring and handle this, Mark, me and you can go one-on-one for the title. Who's the best number 1 fan, Daniel Bryan? Hey,
do you think the IWC would stream that? Would that be a match worth streaming?
I think you'd sell out, brother.
We'd sell out the illegal free streams, indeed. Well, I want to thank Dalyxman for joining us. We've got a lot more show to come. But thanks, my man, for coming on. It was a very good conversation. And make sure you let your followers know that we had this great discussion here on the OTRSCentral podcast on Blog Talk Radio.
Yes, sir. This is your boy, Dalyxman, signing off. You guys have a good day. Peace out, man.
Oh, well, there you go. Very, very good indeed. I'm sorry that ran a little bit over. We've still got a few minutes here until Metal D actually gets on the phone. So in the meantime, I see a few of you have called in, I assume, just to sit there and actually listen to the show, which is fine. We'll get a couple of questions from you now about Hijack Raw or CM Punk or Daniel Bryan or anything else pertaining to the WWE. I'm just going to shout out your area code. You should know who you are. Yeah, let's do this. Area code 916. You're on the air with the Schleg Daddy here on OTRS Central. What's going on?
Hey, what's up? This is David from Sacramento. I just wanted to say hi. I have a few questions, but first off, what did you think of my ode to Smokey?
Is this David Bent?
Yeah.
Outstanding stuff, sir. Outstanding stuff. I miss that big gray and sexy pussycat every day, and I think the fans do too, man. I mean, if there was ever a fan that intimidated the WWE, it was him. He loved Mark Henry. They pushed Mark Henry. He loved Sheamus. They pushed Sheamus. The thing that everybody forgets, though, is that heading into SummerSlam 2013, everybody was assuming that John Cena was going to win, and he was just going to bury Daniel Bryan. And Smokey threw his big, sexy weight behind Daniel Bryan, and almost instantly, within 24 to 48 hours, the mindset went from Daniel Bryan has no chance to he might win to, oh my God, he is going to win. That is his great contribution, I think, to all the wrestling fans out there. I know you miss him. I know I miss him every day. Absolutely, no doubt about it. I appreciate that, too. That was a great ode there on the old Facebook page. What other questions you got for me, David?
Okay. About Daniel Bryan, and you were just talking with Dalyxman, and I heard all that. I want to throw this option out there, just in case they do bring back Money in the Bank this year. Let's say the Real Americans are in Money in the Bank, and Antonio Cesaro wins. Now, we need a face in the it's heel versus heel in the main event. What if Antonio Cesaro cashes in, like he wins Money in the Bank, cashes in, and he's the face going into the main event? He doesn't have to win, but just the fact that he got close, like he could get screwed over by Swagger, which will officially break up the team because we see it coming. The cracks are in the mirror right now that this is going to happen between the Real Americans. But the fact that Cesaro would be in the main event of Mania because he had Money in the Bank. Nobody has cashed in at Mania. He doesn't have to win. I know a few people have not won Mania, Sandow and Cena, but what I'm really liking about some of these teams and some of these people like Daniel Bryan, the Usos, until they won the title, it was the key word, so close. People are getting so close to success, and it would really be a push for someone like him. I mean, I like Dolph Ziggler, but I don't see him winning Money in the Bank again.
No.
What do you think about that option?
Well, let me ask you this. I counter that with a question, because I kind of like the idea. To me, Money in the Bank I always felt was a perfect kind of curtain-jerker WrestleMania match. I don't think it should have ever been its own pay-per-view concept, especially now since there's only one world championship. Would it work better if it was Cesaro, or would it work better if it was Roman Reigns?
You know what? I would love it to be Roman Reigns because it would fit better with the build of the two heels. However, they already did so much build up towards the disbanding of the Shield, and now that you have Seth Rollins, because I don't know if you've been following it on SmackDown, but Dean Ambrose he punched Seth Rollins on SmackDown because I guess he wants him to defend the title.
Look, if you want to get Cesaro over in a big way as a babyface, that's how you do it. And I kind of like the idea because I'm the type of guy, David, that I like out of the box, unique type of perspectives and unique ways of doing things. And that would be something different. If nobody could say anything else about it, it would be something that has never been done before. Your Money in the Bank winner trying to cash in at WrestleMania and taking a guy like Cesaro, and like you said, he could lose that match. He could be the guy ultimately got pinned in that match. But, man, would you make a big-time statement in saying that, hey, this guy is a future player here. So, no, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. I've got Metal D calling in now. Do you want to hold on? And then maybe I'll get another question from you and some of these other callers afterwards. You can keep listening if you want.
Sure.
On the phone.
Sure.
Okay. Let's do that then. Okay.
All right.
My next guest should need no introduction to any of you, but he's going to get one anyways. My friend, your friend, that I foolishly used to try and call Relish, even though I still think the name worked better. It is, I will call him the OTRSCentral kind of digital guru. Isn't that a fancy title? Ladies and gentlemen, our WWE Network special correspondent, Metal D. How's it going out there in the old Waterloo, Iowa, Metal D?
It's doing well. How is it there in OTRS land?
It is okay. I think it's probably like 60 or 65 degrees outside today. So if there is one thing that I miss about not being in Iowa anymore, it's that I don't get to watch the pay-per-views and the shows with you guys and do the reviews with you guys. The one thing that I don't miss, though, is that Midwestern winter that we used to get in Iowa. No, sir. I have a T-shirt and shorts outside.
It's been difficult. Yeah, it's been long and difficult to say the least. This is we're actually above freezing now, so that's a plus, I guess, for some people, I guess.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. No doubt about it. To borrow your phrase, yes, I got it in. Now, obviously, a big focus of the WWE since February 24th has been the WWE Network. And this
even before that.
Even before that, absolutely. But now that the WWE Network has launched, this is a big-time focus for this company. And this does have the potential, one way or another, to be a game changer. Now, I know you're somebody that has went ahead and subscribed to the WWE Network. What made you decide to just subscribe to the WWE Network, even though at times you're not always 100% pleased with the current WWE product?
Several reasons. It's probably, number one, obviously, it's the pay-per-views. But, before that, I wanted to get my foot in the door so that I knew what was going on, prior to getting WrestleMania, and, I didn't want to order it like the day before WrestleMania or like even the week before WrestleMania because I think that there's going to be another huge uptick in subscriptions. Not unlike there was, before, but I think that they'll have the kinks all worked out this time and they'll be prepared for it. But, I just wanted to see what it offered, there was a lot of hubbub about it. I wanted to see what it offered prior to that, and, get caught up with it, and be familiar with, with its, structure and, the stuff that, all the programming that it had to offer. So that's why I didn't even bother with the 1 week free or anything like that. I just went in, head first and got and just bought it.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing, even though it technically signed me up twice. So after that week trial that I didn't sign up for expired, I had to sit there and re-enter my information. But you would probably say, too, that the price point, the fact that they got aggressive with this, and you being a retail man just like I'm a retail man, $9.99 a month for what all they were offering is an incredibly aggressive kind of price point to really
it's a no-brainer.
Word out there and draw the people in. Like you said, just for the pay-per-views alone, not to mention the other, archive content and even some of the original content and some of the other things. What have been your initial thoughts on the WWE Network as a whole, now that you've had it for, a couple of weeks now?
Yeah, well, the first couple of days, there were hiccups, and stuff like that, but that goes with, any kind of new venture that's going on. Everything's going to have a hiccup here and there. But once it got going, and then once I was able to get into it and watch a full show of anything that I chose, I'm actually very impressed with what it's got. Granted, it doesn't have the full, allotment of what it's going to have. It's almost like just like the initial taste of a candy bar, you want more, obviously, and you want the rest of the candy bar, but you're not going to get it just yet. But the initial taste of it, I love it. I think it's great, and there's just going to be more added to it. They're not going to take anything more away. They're not going to take anything away from it. There's just going to be more and more stuff added to it. So right now I'm very pleased with it.
Now, when we talk about the initial launch of this, because I do think this is an important question to ask. Now, the way they announced it out there in Vegas and all of that, they had a lot of buzz and they had a lot of hoopla about it. But they made it a very narrow window of time between the announcement of it and the actual ability to go ahead and subscribe for it. And, it's only a month and a half between going live and WrestleMania 30. Do you feel that the WWE in some ways has potentially created their own problems by sitting there and waiting until it went live before people could actually subscribe? And then, not only that, potentially having some major issues down the road because the traffic that they have for some of these other shows, whether it be live or on demand, is going to pale ultimately in comparison to WrestleMania 30. Do you feel that the WWE could potentially be setting themselves up for some major problems here and potentially for failure?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They set themselves for failure immediately out of the box when they did not allow for, early subscriptions or anything like that. You had to know, and I think everybody that was a WWE fan that planned on subscribing to this on the first day or the first 2 days had to know that something was going to go wrong. everybody had to know that. If you didn't know that going in, then you had no idea about, digital media or anything like that. You had to know something was going to go wrong. Everybody predicted that there was going to be an overflow of people wanting to subscribe right away. So they set themselves up for failure immediately. But the one thing about this is that the WrestleMania and all of that is going to be on the live feed that nobody has really had any problems with. Not huge problems. Everything that the network has had problems with has been the on-demand part.
Not entirely true, because keep in mind, during that NXT Arrival show, that first really live stream of a major show, once Tyler Breeze made his entrance, that cut off for a lot of subscribers and streamers, if you will, and it didn't come back on. Now, I get the whole concept of, sitting there and doing some trial by fire, and I applaud them. To me, they should be live streaming as much as they possibly can before WrestleMania 30 happens. But do you think this is kind of an example of the WWE diving head into something that they fully don't appreciate and they fully don't understand? Because let's face it, Vince over the years has not exactly been a huge fan of the Internet, and that I don't think ever really has fully understood how the Internet works. Do you think that is part of the inherent problem with the WWE, is that the concept is great and everything that they're trying to do is great, but ultimately they're trying to get into something that they don't fully understand?
Yes and no. Yes, they don't understand it, but that's why I think they put it in the hands of the MLB people. The MLB people are the ones that are really running this network and, taking on the subscribers, doing the content and everything else, uploading content and everything else. So the WWE, while they are supplying the content, they're not exactly the ones that are supplying the software, taking on the subscribers, doing the streams, stuff like that. It comes out of the MLB people. So it's a question of whether they know what they're getting into, more as what the WWE. The WWE contracted them to take care of them. So it's up to the MLB people right now to go ahead and take care of the WWE. So, it remains to be seen if that's going to happen. I think that by then they'll have everything worked out, though. I really do.
Now, we could sit there, too, and say that even though they're doing it through MLB Advanced Media, so on and so forth, is ultimately a lot of fans that are paying their subscription price, which isn't a big price to begin with, let's be honest. But if one of your big selling points is that you're going to be able to get every pay-per-view for basically $10 a month right now, or even eventually if they raise the price point, which we'll talk about in a moment, and it doesn't work, the fans aren't going to blame MLB. They're going to blame WWE.
WWE for their decision of putting MLB in charge of it. No, and I understand that. But one other thing that you have to also take into consideration is this, is that now that the initial influx of subscribers has happened, and they have this number of subscribers, and I'm sure that I'm positive that the number of new subscribers today isn't even close to what it was, a week ago. So by then, they're going to have some sort of an idea on how many subscribers there's going to be. Even if they take a number out of the hat from, a week outside of WrestleMania, they will know at that time how many servers they're going to need and everything else that they can, that can handle that amount of people going on there and, getting the stream. They're going to be able to do that. And they're going to be able to add servers along the way and everything else. So I think that they're going to be more prepared than what people think.
Now, I will say this. I guess this is kind of a question I have for you, too, when we talk again about the problems. And I don't mean to just harp on the negatives here or harp on the problems, but there are potential, hurdles and obstacles and barriers and problems that are very present and very prevalent with this whole concept and that have played out so far. I got the email a little while back after that NXT Arrival show where they're talking about the fact that, with any new venture, you have to expect these type of issues and challenges, and you have to be patient with us and skip and whoop-de-woo. Now, like I said, you and I have both worked in business environments and retail environments for years, and I don't know about you, but if we sat there and told one of our bosses, well, this is a new concept that you're expecting us to do, and we're not familiar with it, so you have to expect hurdles and hiccups and obstacles along the way, what would that boss say to you? More likely than
that email was rather stupid. I never actually got it. I never got
How about
the email.
instead of sending the email, working harder to fix the issue quicker, I guess is my question.
Exactly. How about, wording it that way? I mean, basically, you're not blaming yourself or the people that are in charge of, the stream or anything like that. You're basically blaming the fan for it to, for them expecting it to work.
Which is a concern of mine. Which I don't know about you. It's a bit of a concern of mine is the fact that the WWE, with that, showed me a total lack of being able to take accountability. Instead of sitting there and sending out an email and say, you know what, this is something new. We should have been better prepared. We apologize for the inconvenience. We apologize for the for the problems. We're striving to get better. We're striving to be perfect. There will be hiccups along the way, but you demand better and we expect better of ourselves. We got none of that. It was like you said, they were passing the buck to the fans, and that kind of troubles me a little bit is that in order for this venture to work both short-term and long-term, in my opinion, the WWE is going to have to take accountability. Because what happens if all of a sudden, like remember with WrestleMania 1 when it was on all those closed-circuit venues and the feed went out in Pittsburgh, and a couple of weeks later they had to show it on Pittsburgh local TV, the entire show for free to the people out there? Is the WWE, if that network stream goes down for a quarter, a third, or half of that audience for WrestleMania 30, what are they going to do? Are they going to take accountability? Are they going to do everything they can to make sure they rectify the problem? Or are they just going to sit there and try and blame it on that like they did there?
Well, I'll tell you this. If it does that for WrestleMania 30, this may only be a 6-month venture or less. Because the bottom line is this, is you are selling this you're selling WrestleMania basically to watch it in this format. That's how they want it. And I tell you what, if they lose, half of WrestleMania due to a, server problem or anything like that, do you think that those subscribers are going to re-up after that 6 months?
No, and in fact, there could be enough of a movement and momentum to try and get them to break that 6-month commitment because they're so pissed off about what occurred. And
absolutely,
frankly,
you're going to see them jump off the bus fast.
Absolutely. Which kind of ties into the next thing is we know that right now it's $9.99 a month with a 6-month commitment subscription, whatever you want to call it. You'd have to anticipate at some point in time that price point is going to go up. It's probably going to go up $2 here, then $3 the next time, then maybe $5 the next time. How much do you think they could charge for this network and still keep most of the people that they'll have do it initially at the $9.99 price point? What's going to be not enough? What's going to be perfect? What's going to be too much? And how important is WrestleMania 30 and the future pay-per-view stream qualities and et cetera in that decision-making process in terms of what that ultimate price point is going to be long-term down the road? Because it's not going to be $9.99 forever, and I don't think it should be.
Right. I agree with you that it isn't going to be $9.99 forever. I do see it staying at that price point for at least a year, if not a year and a half. Because basically what you want to do in this time period is that you want to build subscribers. You want to build a subscriber base. You don't want to jack up the price, shortly after you get that subscriber base and you get them to, the key is after the 6 months is to keep that subscriber base for another 6 months and get them for another 6 months. You do not want to raise the price after that first initial 6 months. You want to keep them people that already subscribed and get them in. So if you lock them in for a whole year on that, okay. I'm not sure exactly where they're going with their business model, and how the math is all going to work out, but I can see them leaving at $9.99 for at least a year, if not a year and a half. They'll probably raise it maybe incremental from there.
Do you think it's a possibility where they work at like utility bills and cell phone bills and et cetera, where new customers get that $9.99 price all the time, and then afterwards it's $11.99 and then $14.99 and then $19.99? Could you see them going with that business model? And what do you think is like the top price that they can charge where they still keep the most of the people happy and make more money without potentially losing subscribers and losing money with this venture?
I can see them doing like a tiered option. For instance, if you want to subscribe to it for a year, it'll be $9.99 a month, but you're locked in for a year. If you want to do it for 6 months after that, then it'd be like $14.95 a month. If you want to do it for 3 months, it'd be $19.95. Well, whatever the numbers would be. But I could see them doing like a tiered option for people rather than lock them in for 6 months. Give people an option so that if they only want to get it for a couple of months or get it, for 6 months or if not a year, give them options. And I could see them doing that. And the more that you stay on with it, the less that it'll be. I could see them doing that.
What is WWE going to do with the people? And you know what's going to happen, too, being in the business world yourself and all of this. You know what's going to happen, where people are going to sit there and only have the money on their card for 1 month, and then the next month they're not going to have it. Is the WWE really prepared to be bill collectors and debt collectors? Is that the business they're really wanting to get into? Could you see them maybe getting to the point where they charge that price up front, where they say it's $9.99 a month, but it's going to be $59.94 up front for all 6 months?
I don't really see them being able to do that. I see them, because even if you were to subscribe to like a NHL package or a football package of any sort, or baseball package, it's always tiered. It's split up into payments. I don't see how they would be able to do that. Now, I did not read those fine print. I'm not sure that anybody that subscribed did. If you did, you got more time on your hands than what I do. Now, I don't know what the fine print says on how they can go ahead and go out and get that money or whatnot, but you have to expect that that's going to happen, and that's going to be a small percentage of a loss on there. I think that goes without saying. If you don't pay for it, then you don't get it. They shut them off. They're not going to be able to access their account or whatever. So if you want it, you better go back up there and you better put your card back on.
Because I can just envision where if people use their debit cards and people didn't have the money, it sounds silly, but it'll happen, and people will get overdrawn accounts, and then all of a sudden the WWE tries to pull a couple of times, and people are getting hit with $30, $35 NSF fees each time, and then you get what I'm saying? It potentially opens up a whole different can of worms. I don't think that it works that way, though, when it comes to, like, Visa and MasterCards and stuff like that. I know it works that way with checks, obviously, but I don't think that works that way with Visa and MasterCard. Yeah. No, not with Visa and MasterCard, but I'm talking about a lot of people maybe use let's face it, a lot of wrestling fans probably don't have great credit, and as a result may or may not have credit cards, but they might have debit cards that they use through their banks, for their checking, their savings, whatever. It's something that I can envision potentially being a problem down the road. Now, the ultimate question is here, that'll be before you get off of here, and I appreciate you coming on for this debut edition. It wouldn't have felt right if somebody from the old OTRS crew wasn't on here, and you got the lucky nod here.
I drew the short straw this week, huh?
You drew the short straw, indeed. Mikey and Tony and Mark said, we got better things to do. Apparently you did not. But the ultimate question is, we know no matter what that there's no disagreement here. I think everybody can agree that this is a game changer for the WWE. What type of game changer and to what level maybe is yet to be determined. And we'll have to see how this plays out. What do you envision the future of the WWE Network to be? Is this going to be a positive game changer? Is this going to be a negative game changer? Is this going to be a short-term project? Or is the WWE Network here to stay? And is this going to be an example of WWE transcending entertainment and really setting a new business model? Or is this going to be known down the road as a tragic, colossal mistake where the WWE ultimately lost their ass?
I think it has the potential of being the game changer that everybody thinks that it should be. I really do, but, it goes back to, the whole idea is, will it work? And by that means, does it work, by the delivery of the pay-per-views, digitally and everything else, through the Internet? If it does that, then this thing's here to stay. This is a game changer. This is something that every wrestling fan in the world, everywhere, eventually when it's available in the world, will appreciate, will love, will embrace. And the WWE, at that point, they have options that they never had before. They could be their own advertiser, basically, is what I'm saying.
And here's where people have to understand the old pay-per-view business model. They had to share revenues with the cable and satellite providers, the pay-per-view providers. They get so much more of their revenue during doing this type of venture. And I applaud
every dime that they're getting from the pay-per-views is theirs now.
Right. Well, except for the cut that they're obviously giving MLB for providing the network infrastructure. But that's a much smaller piece of the pie compared to what they were giving out before. And I do applaud the WWE for understanding that the way they were doing business needed to change and that the old business model was becoming antiquated. And this, to me, was their ultimate answer to how do you solve Internet streaming? You become streamers yourself, and you do it at a reduced price. The question is obviously they still have to expand overseas, into the European and Asian and Australian markets in the years to come, the South American markets, Canada, all these different places. Are they going to do enough business with this to be able to justify the fact that they're not doing it in the old business model? Are they going to make enough money with this once it expands internationally to be able to sit there and say 5 years from now that, God, this was a game changer and this ultimately was the right decision?
That's $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, we really don't know until they release how many subscribers that they have for a full 6 months or whatever. We don't know that. Until we know those numbers, we just don't know. But with the people that I know and all the numbers that I've heard thrown out there, this is going to be successful for them. Not only do they get the gate that's at New Orleans, but they're going to get, what would you say, 65-75% of the revenue that comes off of that from the pay-per-view that they don't have to pay to the cable companies. I mean, there are going to be some cable companies that are going to be carrying it, but, I mean, for the most part, they don't have to pay the Dish Network anymore. And
potentially more eyeballs on their bigger shows. That's a big thing that sometimes money can't buy is more eyeballs on your bigger shows. What good does it do to have 4.5 million people watch a Raw episode, let's say, 2.5 million people watch a SmackDown, and 200,000 watch one of your standard pay-per-views? How about you have that same audience and you turn it into maybe 500,000 people? Sure, at a reduced price, but more people are watching your bigger shows.
More people are watching it. More people are getting in on it. Yeah. Because you got to think about this, too. I mean, how many people out there went out and, they'll have one friend order the pay-per-view, and then they'll all gather at that one place. But how many of those friends now are all subscribers to the WWE Network? Add up all those friends that you would, those 10 friends.
Can watch it on their TVs, and they can watch it through their gaming systems, and they can watch it through their streaming devices like you do, their laptops like I do. Yeah, absolutely, I completely agree.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank you, Metal D, for taking the time out for this introductory OTRSCentral podcast. I appreciate it very, very much. Are you and Mr. Rao going to do some damn videos on the After the Credits show or no?
Hey, we have done videos. It's just a question of him uploading them. He's got them. I don't.
You need to tell him to do that then.
Yeah, I need to get him off of his butt and get going on those. But no, thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. And anytime, give me a call. I'll be ready to jump in with you.
See, that's what I like to hear. We'll have to have you on again on this road to WrestleMania at some point in time. Thank you, Dwayne.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy. Thanks. So there you go. Thank you very much to Dalyxman earlier on for taking up more than the 30 minutes. I knew that was going to happen, and thanks to Metal D for taking his time to talk about the WWE Network. Potentially, again, like I said, a very big game changer. Now I've seen that a lot of you are on the line right now, whether it be to listen or whether it be that you want to call and ask some questions. We've still got TNA Lockdown to talk about, so I would prefer in the last 25, 26 minutes of the show, if you do have any questions, that you ask them about Lockdown so that way we could talk about this show. If you have one or two questions, try to shout them out there. I want to get through as many of these questions for the people that took the time to call as possibly could. So I'm going to start back with David in Sacramento, and he'll ask his question or two, maybe if he's got any about TNA, and then I'm just going to try and fire through as many of them as possible. Are you there, David?
Yeah, I'm here. Two quick questions about TNA. Do you think if the reign of Magnus goes really long throughout 2014, it could culminate with EC3 turning face? And my other question is, what's your? I mean, I know it's not a big success, but do you think it is still a smart move that TNA is doing these one night onlys?
Let's talk about the first question. Potentially, if you had Magnus go as champion, maybe all the way to Bound for Glory, could by that point in time you see an EC3 turn babyface, or maybe he challenges after winning, let's say, the BFG series, and maybe Magnus turns babyface at that point, and EC3 kind of becomes that chosen one. It's possible. I mean, at least I'll say this, is that TNA is focusing on some new, fresh faces, which is exactly what they needed to do. And your other question pertaining to, run that by me one more time, so that way I make sure.
The one night only, basically, TNA's equivalent to In Your House, the one night only pay-per-views.
I would have to think that, and with them being an LLC, a limited liability company, we don't get to see TNA's financials. I can't imagine that that's been an incredible financial success. And with the WWE rolling out the WWE Network, I'd almost have to envision at some point in time if TNA is going to go away from one-night-onlys and try to copy and mimic the WWE by having a TNA network of their own. Because if the WWE network works, everybody else is going to want to try it.
Going into this year, now we have the WWE Network. People will be paying $10 a month for that, whereas the one-night-onlys are $15 a month.
Right, and let's face it, a lot of the people, when people talk about terms like IWC and they hate it, well, the fact of the matter is you could sit there and say every wrestling fan's on the Internet, and that's true. But there's a certain percentage of those wrestling fans on the Internet that live for talking about professional wrestling. It might be 25, 30, 33% of that total audience. A lot of those fans are the ones that will tune in and watch a TNA. Now, on the flip side of that, a lot of those same fans are the ones that will stream a TNA pay-per-view. So how much money can they really make, even if they're only charging whatever it is, $15 for a show for a one-night only, if a lot of those people are still streaming it? I mean, it's just the old pay-per-view business model. I applaud TNA for trying something different and wanting to do something different, but they went a certain direction, and the WWE went in a different direction. If WWE's direction works, I'd have to anticipate TNA is going to want to try and follow suit, and it'll be the right decision for them to do.
Sure.
Well, thanks for listening. You can keep listening. I'll just put you back on hold, David. I appreciate it. And thanks again for the Smoky Ode.
No problem.
Next caller is area code 814. You're on the air with the Schleg Daddy. What you got for me?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I sure can.
Okay. Hey, this is Steve or Piznick64. I do have a couple. 64.
Yay, Steelers. What's going on, man?
And I have a couple questions. I have one WrestleMania question and one TNA question.
Fire away, my man.
Well, first, my WrestleMania question is, going into WrestleMania 30, do you think that they should have kept the Damian Sandow with the Money in the Bank? Now, if you think about it, going into Batista and Randy Orton as two heels, maybe you can have Damian have a face turn right here. And because, he was kind of getting over, as a heel, and he probably could have had maybe a good face turn here, kind of like that guy I was saying earlier about Cesaro having a Money in the Bank thing. I just think about it now, this would have been a great opportunity for him to keep the Money in the Bank.
Yeah, and let me address this before you get to the TNA question, because I think you bring up a good point. Again, we were talking about when David brought it up, the fact that nobody's ever cashed in or tried to cash in the Money in the Bank at a WrestleMania. And when you're talking about a Sandow, he to me is that example of a heel that always loses. So he ends up becoming the hero because he actually has obstacles to overcome because he can't win damn matches. To me, it was incredibly ridiculous to have him sit there and win Money in the Bank just so that way John Cena could beat him with one damn arm. That is stupid, and that is ridiculous. That clearly indicates to me they had no long-term plan with Sandow winning the damn Money in the Bank briefcase to begin with, so maybe they shouldn't even have bothered doing it to begin with. But a guy like Sandow, when he's a heel like that, the best way to get him over as a babyface is get him over as a heel. And when people start to get into what he's doing and they become entertained by what he's doing, they start to respect what he's doing, then you could flip him babyface. Well, if you did that with him as a Money in the Bank winner like you suggest, and you put him into that match at WrestleMania, he wouldn't even necessarily have to win, but he would instantly become the hero of the crowd. And, man, at least for the short term, you've got some big-time momentum for Sandow as a babyface, and then you go from there and see what happens. But I don't think it's a ridiculous notion at all. So what about your TNA question?
Well, I've always been a Samoa Joe fan since I first started watching TNA in like 2009, I think. That's when my brother, he was like around your age, he started watching it. Because I remember he's just like, you ever watch TNA? I'm like, what the hell is TNA? And I started watching, and I'm like, that was back when they had the 6-side ring back then. I was like, what the heck? And then I just saw Samoa Joe. I'm like, oh, man, he's my favorite. And my question is this, do you think that Samoa Joe, if he wins it, should he have a long title run going into maybe until Bound for Glory? Or do you think Magnus should have a long title run until maybe Bound for Glory or even further?
I talked about this in my lockdown preview that I did on the OTRSCentral channel on YouTube, and that is that I feel that TNA needs to capitalize on what the WWE isn't doing. A lot of people are disenfranchised with Daniel Bryan's use, and they're disenfranchised with CM Punk being gone for the WWE. They hate how the WWE is pushing certain people and not pushing others. TNA has a chance to bring back some of those disenfranchised TNA fans, maybe even suck over some of those internet fans that watch WWE that know who Samoa Joe is and like him from his previous time in ROH and with a TNA by having him win this belt tonight. I think they have to do it. I think they have to put that belt on Samoa Joe. Does that mean he needs a long title reign? No, not necessarily. But I do think it has to happen tonight, even if he only carries that belt for a week, a month, 3 months, maybe until Slammiversary in June, maybe less than that. I don't think he has to have a long title reign. If Magnus beats Samoa Joe tonight, though, I do think that Magnus needs to have a long title reign, maybe going all the way to Bound for Glory. So it depends on the individual. But I think tonight TNA must understand that they have an opportunity to generate some positive will and some positive attention on their company by having Samoa Joe be victorious and having that world title around his waist at the end of the show. That's my thoughts on it. Thanks for calling in, Piznik64. You can keep holding to listen if you want to, my man. I appreciate it. Go Bears. Next one is area code 724. You're on the air with the Schleg Daddy. What's your name and what are you calling for?
Mike from Pittsburgh.
Mike.
How you doing? Good. I don't know if you remember me. I called like last month about the Darren Young thing on the other show.
Yes, absolutely.
You remember me?
With absolutely, with my good friend Antoine over there at More to Life Radio. Absolutely, I remember that.
Okay, I had something else, but if we're going to get some TNA talk on, I actually had a TNA discussion I want to talk to you about. What I really like is the youth movement TNA is going with. I think the biggest problem was initially when they came on the scene, they always try to go head-to-head with the WWE, and they just couldn't do it. And the problem is they brought in all these old has-beens and all these former WWF and WCW stars. But when you do that, and you turn your talent, you're trying to develop, throw them in the backseat, you're telling your audience that these guys who used to be in the WWF matter and the TNA guys really don't matter. What do you think about that, Schleg Daddy?
Absolutely. I completely agree. I know other people, I think Trademark 629 agrees with me on this one, is that TNA should be a company that is built on being counterculture to the WWE. And as a result, one of the ways to be counterculture is to wrestle a different style, present yourself in a different style, and feature different guys that are not familiar to your audience in general. Make some new stars. Now, that doesn't mean you can't bring in somebody legit like a Jeff Hardy, like a Kurt Angle, to work with some of your top guys that you're trying to create as stars. But for so many years, it was like, oh, we got to have a feud for Jeff fucking Jarrett. Every guy that we bring in's got to feud with Jarrett. They got to go through Angle. And it was like it got to the point where you're using the TNA guys to put over the old ECW, WCW, and WWE guys. And to me, that was completely ridiculous. That's like
and then that actually puts I'm sorry. I think that actually puts eyes back on the WWE because you're telling the audience these guys don't matter. The WWF guys matter. These guys don't matter. So watch WWF because we're just a minor league program.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen is that it's occasionally okay to put over the other guy, but they would sit there and put him over and put him over and put him over, and then they're feuding with each other, and then the TNA originals aren't being featured at all, or when they are, they're just being used as jobber bitches, and they're sitting there and getting buried and buried and buried, and I completely agree with you, and that's a big part of TNA's problem, no matter how much they want to acknowledge it or not. They want to sit there and talk about, well, we had to get some eyeballs on here and da-da-da. Well, but you were so focused on that week-to-week rating, it seems like, and nothing else. You weren't building anything for the future. I think Dixie Carter said before is that it's a lot easier to buy somebody else's star than it is to create a new star. And if you follow that mantra, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just always going to be a short-term company living at the edge of a lightning bolt, if you will, and that close to ultimate failure. And that's exactly why I agree with you. I've actually been relatively pleased that TNA in 2014 has focused much more on different guys and younger guys and de-emphasize these older guys. Let some of these older guys go because it needed to happen. You're trying to be counterculture. Well, be counterculture. Create some new stars. Feature different people in a different way on a different type of show. Don't try to be the WWE light Southern ripoff. That isn't even a very good ripoff. I completely agree with you on that 100%.
And that's honestly why TNA's, I think, in the bankrupts, or at least they say, was because they spent all that money on feature guys. And unfortunately, you do bring feature guys, and you have to pay them, but that drains your resources. And all that resources they spent, they did nothing to improve or help the product or get any more eyeballs on it. I mean, Paul Heyman said the best. Dixie Carter doesn't have what it takes to do her job. And anybody under 30 should have their head chopped up. If you saw that interview with that Ariel Helwani guy, or whatever his name is, I'm sure you saw it.
He was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. Anybody over 40 needed to have their head chopped off because of what had happened and what had transpired. You're absolutely right, Mike.
You shouldn't be an organization just to give a guy a paycheck. When you're done with wrestling, you should move on unless you have some value. Well, I'm not going to take up any more of your time, Slug Daddy. I really appreciate it, and you have a good one.
All right, thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Now let's move on. Let's see here. You have been holding for a long time, area code 216. You're on the air with the Slug Daddy. What you got for me? Area code 216. You're on the air with the Slug Daddy. What you got for me? Don't want to talk. Just wants to listen. And who could blame him? How about area code 718? You're on the air with the Slug Daddy. What you got for me?
Well, I was just actually listening, but my name is Will Red Radio. You actually like my show, The Will and Tony Show. I just want to say that I enjoy listening to the show.
Awesome job of sneaking in a plug. That's awesome.
I didn't even do that, but
I respect that. I respect that. That's right. You got to get on, get your stuff in. You got to plug your stuff. That's how you do it, young man. What's going on, Will? What you got for me?
No, I just want to give your show a shout-out. It's a great show. I've been listening to your stuff. I've been looking at some of your stuff on YouTube because I was actually on with you on Anton's show, More to Life Radio. It's a good show. I believe that the WWE Network, I believe, is a great thing. I don't know how it's going to be long-term, but it's going to be a very great thing for now.
I'd agree. I mean, it's going to be one of those things that there's going to be some bumps along the road. They're going to stump their toes. It's going to be important for them to stick with it long term, and I hope they have a long-term plan and a long-term business model because it is going to be a game changer, and it's up to the WWE ultimately to determine whether or not that's going to be a positive or a negative game changer. So I will give you one last chance. Don't plug Antoine at More to Life Radio. I'll do that because he probably didn't pay you to do that. So he didn't pay you to do that. It's all about money, brother. No, I'm kidding. What's your show information so that way people can check you out?
Well, you could just like my page, The Will and Tony Show, or you can just add me on Facebook, Will Red Radio. The show can be heard from Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, 6 to 8 p.m.
Outstanding. You take care, Will. Thanks for listening.
No problem.
Glad you did. Let's move on here. Keep firing through. We got about 10 minutes left. Area code 623. You are on the air with the Schleg Daddy. You got any TNA lockdown questions for me?
I do, Schleg Daddy. First off, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Well, first off, I want to say that I was one of those disenfranchised guys when they started bringing in the Aces and Hates. Because the last TNA pay-per-view I watched was Lockdown 2013. That infamous Lockdown 2013. But thinking about it, looking at Lockdown, or whatever it is, tonight, so I'm trying to get back into it, I see it with Magnus and Samoa Joe. Do you think it's one of those things that with either guy who goes over tonight, because I still don't know who's going to go over tonight, I don't know, it's one of those things where people will be happy either way. Because I'll be happy with Magnus, or if they throw me a bone with Samoa Joe, because he was my guy before I was disenfranchised.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because we talk about TNA needing to build new stars, and they are trying to do that with Magnus, whether people like it or not necessarily. But let me ask you this. With tonight's show, you're giving them a chance that you haven't given them in a year because you realized how incredibly dumb Aces and Eights were. It sounds like something a bunch of 8-year-olds are thinking up as their group name when they're in the treehouse fort. Would you be happier with Magnus winning tonight, or would Samoa Joe winning tonight mean something special to you and something that much more to you and make you more likely to want to tune into the TNA product going forward?
Well, I think that I would be happy with Samoa Joe winning the World Heavyweight Championship. But ultimately, I would, at this point, rather see Magnus go over more likely because it's something I haven't seen before from the WWE. We've never had a truly British World Heavyweight Champion.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think you bring up an interesting point, is something I haven't really talked about, and I'm glad you did, and thanks for the call, is that you have to look at this and you say, you know what, you really don't know who's going to go over tonight. And that makes it interesting, doesn't it? It actually does. That's something that TNA has going in their favor. Their featured match, their biggest, most important match of the night, you really don't know who's going to win. It could go either way. Area code 985. What's your name? You're on the air with the Schleg Daddy. What you got for me?
Hi. What's up, Schleg Daddy?
What's going on?
Nothing much. This is Zach from New Orleans. Also Zach from In the Rope Show.
Outstanding stuff. The In the Rope
Show. You
guys
like it?
Make
you
sure.
dig it?
Yeah, we can dig it, sucker. Absolutely. You guys make sure out there that you check these guys out on YouTube. That is youtube.com/InTheRopeShow, correct?
That is correct. I also wanted to mention, I haven't heard anybody being too excited about Jeff Hardy returning.
Willow.
Whisper in the wind, baby. I've been a Jeff Hardy fan since I was a wee little lad,
Yeah,
but
Jeff Hardy,
nobody's talking about
one of those guys. Jeff Hardy's one of those guys I think that sometimes people forget just how big of a star he's been. This is a guy that does date back to the Attitude Era. This is a guy that at one point in time, I do argue, was the number 2 babyface in the WWE behind John Cena. And that distance behind him might not have been that great. But as a Jeff Hardy fan, do you actually feel like TNA is going to do something interesting with him with this Willow character? Are you actually happy to see him back, or would you deep down inside rather see him go back to the WWE?
I would deep down inside love to see him go back to the WWE. Even better, get back with his brother Matt, because, how can you deny that the WWE has, the tag team division is dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's just completely dead. There's no tag teams that can match Edge, Christian, the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys.
Oh,
never.
Now let's be nice to the Usos.
Oh,
the
come
Usos,
on.
I think
Rikishi's sons?
Absolutely. We love Samoa. That's
very true. Very true.
I don't know.
I don't know if you saw on our second edition. I kind of zoned out whenever they were talking about it, and they snapped to my opinion about it, and I just randomly, I was like, oh, well, that's, the New Age Outlaws made fun of Rikishi so much, he had sons to get back at him, and it's because they called him, they said, who's so ugly?
You so ugly. You be nice to you.
I am. I'm slowly liking them.
Check out these guys on In the Rope Show. They're fans of OTRS Central. That makes them good people indeed. Thanks for calling in. This was Zach, right?
Yes, sir. This is Zach Brewster. Follow us.
The Rooster. You're not the Red Rooster.
I crow like a rooster. Yeah, you nailed it.
Just as long as you don't tell me any cock will do. No, thank you for calling in. All right, and then we've got area code 347. You've been holding for a while. You're on the air with the Schleg Daddy. What do you got for me?
How you doing, Schleg Daddy? This is Testicle Storm, Big Storm's long-lost brother. Now, what Testicle Storm wants to know is who are you going for in the Gunner Storm match at Lockdown?
Well, you know what? Either way, I feel like I win. But I've got somebody else here, actually, who has an opinion of his own. Well, let me tell you something, Testicle Storm. Long time no talk to, Daddy. The Dick Storm, baby, knows what everybody else knows, and that is Gunner is the modern-day Viking. But the Vikings had their time 900,000 years ago. Cowboys always rule. They always reign supreme. You still got cowboys to this day. They even make movies about them. And no, I'm not talking about Brokeback Mountain. So, of course, the Cowboy James Storm is going to be victorious tonight because he is destined to go on later this year and become the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Woo! Ride the Dick Storm, baby. Well, thank you, Dick Storm.
I appreciate it.
The Testicle Storm.
Hey, baby, listen,
fun,
I'm trying to hide.
It has a chance, actually, my man, to actually be the match of the night. I will go on record and say that right now. I'm looking forward to it very much. Thank you, Testicle Storm, for calling in. Make sure you do again. I've got time, I think, for one more question. Area code 914. You're on the air.
Schleg Daddy, what's up?
What's going on?
Hey, I just want to say, first of all, thanks for being, a big TNA supporter on YouTube. I get this feeling that there's still a lot of internet hate for TNA, and honestly, I think the product is good, so I don't know why they get, so much crap all the time. Hello? Hello? Schleg Daddy? Hello? Schleg Daddy?
Sorry, everybody, about that. I don't know what the heck happened. I guess the phone could only go for 2 hours at a time, so let me try this one more time. Area code 914, are you there?
Schleg Daddy, what's up?
Yeah, so what's going on? Let's try this for the last 2 minutes.
I don't know what the heck that was. That was weird.
That was very weird indeed. What you got for me, my man?
Hey, so just want to say I'm a big fan. I love the YouTube videos, all the series, the WrestleMania one. I'm loving that. So I got two questions. I got a TNA one. First of all, I was trying to say, I've been watching the show since like 2006, and I think this is the best it's ever been. But I still feel like the internet gives a lot of hate to TNA. I don't know. You're kind of in the center of it all. What do you feel that everyone's kind of the general consensus about TNA is?
I think they've turned off to TNA so much because of the crap that TNA's done to turn them off, and I don't think it's entirely fair, but it is what it is, and TNA ultimately has nobody but themselves to blame. And your other question for me, my man?
That's true. Yeah, but hey, I appreciate you still being a supporter out there.
No
hopefully
problem.
One day it'll turn around, and maybe they'll finally get more than that 1.1 that they've been hoping for so long.
Let's hope so. I got to cut this short. I appreciate it, but I got like a minute left, so I'll get you in on the next time. Just make sure. What was your name, my man?
My name's Mike.
Mike? Okay. Make sure you call in next Sunday when I do it again, and I'll make sure that I get you on the air, okay?
Definitely. Cool. I got an Andre question for you.
Oh, yeah. Make sure you ask me the Andre question next week because I got to cut this short. I'm sorry about that.
Definitely, dude. I love the show. Keep it up.
Thanks, my man. Thank you, everyone, minus the, of course, little itty-bitty technical glitch, for tuning into this debut edition of the OTRS Central podcast. Make sure you go check out the YouTube channel. It is youtube.com/OTRSCentral. There you'll have the March Madness series going on right now, the WrestleMania review series, and, of course, all the other reviews and commentary videos that you so desperately love from the Schleg Daddy. Follow the show on Twitter, twitter.com/OffTheRopeShow. And in the description of this podcast, I will put the new Facebook fan page. It is also on the old Facebook page. Make sure you go give that a like as well. Thanks to my guest, Dalyxman. Thanks to my guest, Metal D. And thanks to all of you that called in. This was a fun experience, and I'll see you next Sunday with another edition of the OTRS Central podcast. Goodbye, everybody.